Searching for a way to move through life in an optimal and effective way is something we are all striving for. There are many techniques that we will find throughout our lives, and it's really a trial and error process to find what works. 2 years ago, I discovered Human Design, a combination of astrology, the I Ching, Kabbalah, and Vedic philosophy. For me, it filled the gaps that astrology alone just couldn't explain about me. Dylan, the Human Design Maven, has been walking the path of human design for over 11 years. His depth of knowledge and ability to share the information on this topic has earned him a loyal following, and he is going to help us gain a deeper understanding of this system so we can all transcend the conditioning we have had throughout our lives and instead live our lives authentically as who we were born to be. Dylan, thank you so much for joining me to have this conversation. I love the way you explain human design because it has a depth and yet an ease of understanding with it.
Thank you for having me, Natalie. I'm really, really grateful to be here, and I'm excited as a responder to hear what questions you have for me and what you are here to initiate as a manifestor.
How did you find human design? And for someone like me, when we first find it, it seems quite complicated, and there are more levels to it than what astrology has, for example. And so how easy was it for you to sort of go through the layers and get that depth of knowledge?
I had an interesting experience because I discovered human design the week that the creator, Ra-Uru-Hu, was passing away. So there was an interesting, I think, kind of spiritual connection between he and I. And in in that week, I was traveling through the island of Kauai, and I had sat down on a riverbank and kind of had this very crazy out-of-body experience that I wasn't expecting, just kind of serendipity. And I felt like something had kind of come back. Like I felt like I left and I came back with something else. And then about a week after that is when I would see my chart for the first time. And there was already like an innate just ability with it. Like this, as soon as I saw the colors and the shapes, even though I had no logical definition of what any of it meant, it just felt so right on. I was like, that is me. That is me. I could just feel it in my gut, in my cells. And so I think the process for me of really coming to understand it consciously was more just unpacking what had already downloaded into my system, because this was and still is my soul contract, my life's work, what I'm here to bring to the world. So it was kind of destiny in a way. And then aside from all that, I had very many fortunate experiences where I was gifted huge volumes of Ra's original material, his lectures, his transcriptions. And so I was able to bring more depth to what I already understood over the next, 7 years. And just really, I was insatiable. I couldn't get enough. Anytime, it was the most entertaining thing to me out of all the things I could possibly do with free time. So that's how it all kind of came to be where it is now.
Well, if that's not a sign that you're fulfilling your life's purpose, I don't know what is. That ease of the transition and the learning, to me, is a sign that that's where you're meant to be and you're on the right path. I've followed astrology for a lot of years, and I obviously do work on the High Vibe Network, and I work with celebrity astrologer David Palmer, the Leo King, and I get so much out of that work, and I get so much out of the astrological knowledge, and especially someone like him who has this depth of knowledge with the astrology. But for me, as I discovered human design, and I'm sure this is the same for many people who are watching this, human design seemed to fill in the gaps that astrology left that I didn't even know existed. But that as I started reading and diving deeper into the whole thing, and especially my own chart, because that's where we all begin to get that understanding by learning about ourselves, I went, I've never known how to explain this about myself. And astrology went sort of 80% of the way, but human design seem to get it over the finish line. Did you find the same thing?
It's interesting for me personally because I actually found astrology like 4 years after I was already into human design. And obviously, there are aspects in human design that refer to astrology, but I didn't really dive into those meanings and significations until later. What I did like about and still do like about human design that astrology doesn't quite offer is these keys of navigating life as yourself. So, like, what do I actually do rather than just who am I and what are my characteristics and how does that explain my understanding of myself, interaction with others? There are these very subtle kind of what we call it a strategy and authority in human design that explains why do certain things happen in your instance, like as a manifestor? Why is that impact that you bring so strongly felt? And why does it ruffle so many feathers with you doing almost nothing to really catalyze that kind of intention? So that's that 20% I think you're thinking about is that the fact that there's a how to that comes with human design that astrology doesn't quite have with it.
Yes. And that thing that you just said about ruffling feathers, that is my entire life. I have upset people wherever I go. And at times I would joke that I can breathe the wrong way. And learning about that specific thing freed me in a way that I don't think anything else in life has been able to, because obviously we want everybody to like us and to be accepted. And it's hurtful when someone doesn't like you, especially if there's not an incident you can point to. So to step into a room and know that not everybody is going to like you, and that's okay, and understanding that it is this closed and repelling aura with the manifestors. And what I'll also say to that is, when I started learning about human design, some of the language to me was quite jarring in terms of that closed and repelling aura, because I think of myself as someone who's very warm and very welcoming and tries to be inclusive of all people. And to read that about yourself, I sort of went, hang on. But yet when I delved deeper and understood what was being said, it was no longer offensive. I understood it. But I found, and again, I'm speaking from a personal experience, but the language at times to be almost a little bit clunky. Have you found that at all, or have you heard that before?
Definitely. Ra, the messenger of human design, definitely had a huge responsibility in being able to choose terminology that would properly convey what human design really is, which is a frequency technology. You know, when you're learning your design and learning how to make decisions as yourself, over and above the circumstantial info of like what your aura type is and your profile and so on, it's really showing you how to make decisions that continually align you to your truest frequency. And that gives you a life that is custom tailored to who you really are, not who you're conditioned to be. So, like a surgeon, sometimes we have to be very incisive. Sometimes we have to be very just sometimes polarizing, sometimes cutting away the fluffiness of the personality, which wants everything to be nice and copacetic and round and lovely, so that we can get to that really specific, unique destiny that's there for us. So there definitely is some language in human design like that really original human design that's kind of yeah, it's heavy. It's kind of it's a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a little bit almost dark in a way because it doesn't give a lot of grace for, you know, the realm of the heart and the emotions and the softer side of humanity. It's a very mechanical language and it can be very jarring at first, but there's levels to that. And if you really learn to take in the limitations of your design, even in terms of the closed and repelling aura, and learn to work within those limitations, you'll see that life opens up in other areas that definitely make up for it. So my advice with the language of human design is take it with a grain of salt, but also understand it's coming from a place of helping you be as precise as possible in getting to what's truly yours. And sometimes we need that specificity.
And just to touch on one other sort of jarring term that was in my chart was the opportunist role model. And I read opportunist and I was horrified. I'm sitting there thinking, I'm not an opportunist. But then again, when I delved deeper and understood what they meant by opportunist, in that my circle is where so many of my opportunities come from. And I understood that and released the offense or the negative connotations attached to that word. It all made perfect sense. So I was just curious if other people had found the same thing. I keep talking about my own journey with human design because I think it's a way for, no, that's wrong. Let's just
Well, you are a role model as a sixth line being. So you do kind of have to role model what it looks like to live your design to kind of get us to that point of the wisdom that you have to share about your journey.
And for me, when I'm hearing people talk about things like human design and astrology, the way I learn is hearing about how they go through it and adapt to it. And so that's why I think I talk this way when it's something like this that I have such a big interest in. And what I will say before we sort of get into the breakdown of how human design is set up and a good way to understand something that is quite layered and complicated, learning to understand my human design, even at a basic level, and embrace it and change my life. And I guess more so change my thought patterns in how I have to exist in this world has been one of the most freeing things I've ever experienced. As a manifestor, I don't go all the time the way a generator does. I do have these bursts of energy where I can achieve an inhuman amount of productivity. And then I kind of crash and I need to retreat into my little cave and just be to re-energize myself and come back and do it again. And I spent most of my life thinking if I could just do that all the time, like everybody else, and the people I'm comparing myself to are probably generators who go and go and go and go, I could conquer the world, literally. But since learning about human design and understanding that that is not how I'm meant to exist, and these ebbs and flows in my energy changed my life, absolutely changed my life. Did you have a similar thing when you were learning? Because you're a manifesting generator, so we're different, but we have similarities.
Mm-hmm. For me, it wasn't so much about the energy levels, it was about the aspects of me where I felt kind of overpowered by other people's energy because I have an open solar plexus, which means a huge focus in my chart is absorbing and amplifying the emotional energy of others. Having this deep empathy to never want to upset anyone, which really is limiting to freedom, in terms of on a personal level. Because if you're never upsetting anybody, you're probably not doing much that's true for you. So that was really freeing for me to then really develop my sensitivity for when it was other people's emotional stuff that I was feeling and to not take it personally, to be able to like feel all that discomfort and still pursue my course, what I need to say, do, and live. And I think that was one of the biggest liberating factors for my journey, as well as understanding that I have an undefined root center. So I wasn't born with consistent motivation to even want to conquer the world or do everything that my family wanted me to do, growing up, or that the other kids were doing or whatever. So that also was a huge pressure, literally, off of me to see that about my chart and to understand that the aligned, motivation would show up when I had that gut yes, and that the right emotional situations would find me as I kind of got stronger in my own energy and attracted the right people and the right situations.
We've obviously talked a little bit about generators, manifesting generators, and manifestors. So we've also got projectors and reflectors. So manifesting generators make up about 70% of the population. And then, and please correct me if I have these numbers wrong. Then we've got manifestors, which are, is it 7 or 9% of the population?
I say 8.
Okay.
Because we're moving, as we move towards 2027, we're going to have even more manifestors than ever. So it will get up there to 9. And then we have projectors at about 20%, and we have reflectors at about 1%.
With the reflectors being so rare in this world, do they have a harder journey? I don't know why I would think that it would be, but I imagine that as a manifestor, when I meet other manifestors who don't know about human design, and I talk about the energy levels and the ebbs and the flows and the closed repelling aura, you see the sort of light switch on for them, because they go, yes, that's who I am. And there is a comfort in getting that knowledge from somebody else. But if you're a reflector and you're sort of wandering the earth almost alone, not quite, but is that a harder journey for them?
I think it is, yeah. Also, the fact that reflectors have very little internal consistency. There's very little to them that makes them who they are, meaning that they are reflecting either the energies around them in community or relationship, or they're reflecting the energies of the transits at any given moment. So it is really important for a reflector to know what they are so that they don't get confused as to who they are, because they can so easily identify with a reflection that they are casting back at somebody in front of them and think that that's who they are. And that can make them, cling on to a place in life that's very unhealthy for them, a location, a job, a role, a relationship, because the consistency feels comfortable. It feels comforting, but it's not going to show them their true journey. Just because they have very little internal consistency doesn't mean that they don't have a destiny all their own. And I've noticed that when reflectors are clear on where they begin and where they end, they're actually very powerful at doing what many of the types can do, manifesting, guiding, generating. So for them, it's really all about, just knowing those specifics so that they don't get lost in all these reflections.
And projectors, what are their roles? Because the generators are here to sort of do the work and get things going and build everything. What are the projectors' roles?
The projectors are the newest type. So they've only been here since 1781, the year 1781, and they are here to guide. They're here to oversee a whole new order, essentially. So there are a vast majority of generators out there, 70% of the population, with immense amounts of energy to devote to projects and initiatives and building the world. But they very seldom know what their specialization is. They very seldom know what they're designed to do. A projector can meet somebody and, in the most casual of contexts, have a conversation with them that allows them to illuminate who that person really is and show them, look, this is your purpose, and activate them to that purpose and send them on their way. So they not only can see the bigger picture of the overarching, plan or creation that wants to be brought into life, they see where each person with their individual talents gets plugged into it to optimize that creative process. They're the leaders of the future.
One of my best friends is a projector. I ran her chart about a month ago, and you talking about what a projector is, because I had to send her literature because I just don't have the knowledge. Everything you just said makes sense. And she is a leader in a way that I have never seen. And she understands that she's a great networker, but I don't think she fully understands the power that she has. We all talk about it when we're discussing her in the sort of wider circle, but she can work a room and gather people and make things happen and move in a way like I have never seen anyone before. It's an incredible thing to be able to witness a projector in their power, really just going for it.
Yeah, and I had a recent insight about projectors that I wasn't really thinking of before, and it's when they're in the invitation, so a projector strategy is to be invited. When they really come into the proper invitation, whatever you would see in their nine-centered body graph, that energy circuit kind of takes over the whole space or the whole room or the whole collective. So we're not experiencing them so much just as one person with a particular way of seeing or operating. We kind of enter into their program. And then everybody in that space or in that community begins to kind of follow their game plan, whether they see it or are conscious of it or not. And that's the fascinating thing and why they're so effective when they're plugged into the right people. When they're not plugged into the right people, there can be a lot of struggle when it comes to having enough energy to do what everyone else is doing, to keep up with life. And there can be a big struggle with being seen and being heard because they do really rely on those invitations to bring them into new situations. And until that happens, it's kind of like a waiting game for them.
When I was learning about human design, I was reading about Manifestor children. And when I read those few paragraphs in the first book that I had, I put the book down at the end of it and just sat back and took a breath, because it was as if they wrote it about my childhood, my life. And it was a struggle as a manifestor, being in a house full of generators, manifesting generators. I don't know everyone's chart, but it was a big sort of family unit that I grew up in, but I was the black sheep. And understanding why all those things happened and understanding that I was trying to live in my sort of truth and my destiny, but my family wasn't allowing me to, because they wanted me as a generator to conform and to be in that space and just go with what I was being told. And I bucked or fought against that every step of the way. How important do you think it is for people, especially parents, to understand their children's charts to be effective parents?
I mean, that depends on the goal and the definition of the effective parent. But if you really want to raise somebody that doesn't have to spend 20 years of their adulthood unbecoming all of the dogma that you placed upon them just because you simply didn't understand how they properly operated, I think it should be the first order of business. So whenever I see a friend on Instagram like having a new baby, I'm like, just let me know when you want that human design reading, because I'm thinking more of the child than of them, because it just saves us so much blame and shame and guilt and all these weird things that we have to deal with in family dynamics. And it's just like we get to see the individual for who they are and forgive the rest, just say, oh, that's their way. It's not their war against me. It's not their, judgment of my way of thinking, believing, acting, conducting business. It's just that everybody came into this world with a unique blueprint, a unique imprint. And when we respect that, honor that, and give them the language and the tools to communicate from their point of view, everybody upgrades. Everybody gets to work together better. Everybody gets to feel more love. And I think that is the true goal of any family unit.
Do you think it saves frustration for both parent and child when they have that deeper understanding of who their child was born to be?
Yes, absolutely. Because then you also have a game plan for how you want to support that being in becoming the best person they can be. And that's going to look a little different for each type. And that also prevents us from reaching these, crux points in development, like, the end of high school, going into college, where there's this big defining moment of what are you going to become? What are you going to do? Da, 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 da. And it's like, if that person knows their strategy and authority, if they know their type, they have a clear path to at least that next big life decision that can cause a lot of fear and paralysis. And a lot of times, people committing to a 20-year track of their life that may have nothing to do with who they really are. And the resentment that's the byproduct of that towards the family and all that kind of stuff. So it's just so freeing and clarifying, and it's just common sense. Like, why wouldn't she want to know? Why wouldn't you want the driver's handbook to the vehicle that you were born with?
I ask that question because being the black sheep of the family, I know my mum was frustrated with me. I know that she was doing the best that she could and she's trying to raise me, but then I'm there as this fiery, independent little being that is just refusing to conform. And so we were both frustrated in a way that I think had my mum discovered human design, I think a lot of that could have gone away and we actually could have lived a more harmonious existence. And the irony with all of this is my mum was into astrology and spirituality. I just don't think she discovered human design sort of in that time period, but I do think that that could have completely shifted the way we existed together. So then we have the different lines that people are. So I'm a 4/6, the opportunist role model. And currently my 6th line, I'm still sitting on the roof for another 6 years before I come down and sort of step into that final chapter. And then the 4 line is all about my network. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's the fourth line. I'm a 4/6 as well. The fourth line is about having those social gifts that allow you to connect deeply with people. So it's about being able to speak the language of the heart and the soul and the human condition. And to, by being so tapped into the other person, become an influential member of your community. So we can think of it as opportunist. We could also think of it as influencer, somebody who holds the torch up for a certain way of life or way of thinking or way of doing things and says, hey, this worked for me. This brought more love or more clarity into my life. I think it'd be great for you. And so we're always kind of serving the network, serving the community through our one-to-one relationships. And as we open more people's hearts through our presence and our influence, those portals that we've opened then become places where we can receive opportunity in return.
That was the powerful lesson for me, learning about my 4/6 line. Because when I was reading about how you take care of your network and therefore your opportunities come from within the network, I sat with that. And upon reflection, every single great opportunity that led to something good for me did come from within my circle in some way, shape, or form. And that was a really powerful thing, because now when opportunities present themselves, and especially networking opportunities, where in the past I may have said, oh, maybe not, understanding how I am built, I now accept every single one of those things because I understand how important my network is. And I do take very good care of it. And anyone that's in my circle, I'm there for. But in return, all these doors open. So how many other lines are there? I know there's a whole heap of them, but it'll be easier if you sort of rattle them off.
Yeah, so the lines are based on the I Ching hexagram. So there are 6 potentials. And because each person in their design has a conscious and an unconscious side to their design, we each get 2 that we get to carry through life. So in your case, in my case, 4/6, and then there's, a bunch of other combinations that you can have.
So do you know just off the top of your head how many combinations there are?
There are 12. Yes,
Okay.
12 different profiles.
And then it's like
Mhm.
mix and match between what profiles you get or what lines you get with your profile in terms of manifestor, manifesting generator, projector, etc.
Yeah, the way I like to think of it is the type, which is the aura type, which is manifestor, projector, etc. It's what you are. The profile is how you express that whatness, that isness. And then the other pieces that come into play are the strategy and authority, which are specific to type, as well as, when we dial into the actual authority piece, that can vary across types. So I could be an emotional manifesting generator. You could be an emotional manifester. We could have an emotional projector. And there are lots of other variables in there too. And then something that I'm teaching more recently, which is the deeper side of things, is something called variable. And variable is, how does your brain work? What's your ideal environment? What is your psychological motivation when you're in alignment? And what kind of awareness do you have? Is it more peripheral or is it more focused? And these different keys all give us the different signposts to who we really are. And hopefully, through the experiment of playing with our strategy and authority and this knowledge, we see these signposts popping up like, oh, I'm a fear motivated person. Actually, for me, when I'm in that, not fear based, but when I'm motivated to check out in all the details of what might happen, that's actually in alignment for me, as opposed to just playing it by ear. So, yeah, there's many different pieces and keys.
And so we're obviously both 4/6s. Do the 4/6 lines affect us in the same way, even though we're different in terms of you're a manifesting generator and I'm a manifestor?
Yes. Well, the sixth line to also showcase that a bit is the role model. The role model goes through three specific and distinct life phases where they kind of have three lifetimes in one. And so the way that we carry out our role modelness is going to be determined, by our type. You're going to be a very impactful role model because of your close and repelling aura, because of the fact that you're here to inform and initiate as a manifester. As a responsive manifesting generator, the way that I role model is not going to be as in your face. It's not going to be as front and center. It's going to be something that only comes out and is seen when I have a clear response to something in my immediate reality. So I think that there are subtle differences there. It's just that because you're the manifestor archetype, everywhere you go, you're the role model that people are like, what is she doing? Because they're feeling that difference, being only 8% of the population, even if doesn't matter if it's this or that or the other, what they're feeling, there's a frequency difference of you walking into the room. Whether that's they love it or they hate it, doesn't really matter. Whereas me as a manifesting generator, until I get that gut yes, and I'm really generating and manifesting, which comes through a response to something first, you may not know what I am. I may just be kind of hidden in the background somewhere. So yours I would say is a little bit more consistent in how you're seen as a role model, whereas I'm based on those responses that come through my network.
And hypothetically, if we had a 4/6 projector, how would
Mhm.
how would that work for them?
I think the wisdom of the role model would be felt more in the one-to-one connection because the projector has that focused and penetrating aura that's really gives that personal touch to their interactions. And I think that the opportunism or the fourth line in them obviously would be the main place they would be receiving those invitations to come and guide or lead. Um, so they too would probably have a more subtle initial kind of impression until the invitation was given and they really could showcase everything they have hidden in that mastermind of theirs.
Now,
All kind of similar. There's not that much deviation, but it's just about how it kind of comes online or activates that I think the difference is.
and you've talked about defined centers. Does everybody have centers that are defined and undefined? Or are there people that have everything defined or everything undefined?
Yes, both. I mean, defined is who we are. It's like what we bring to the table, and undefined is where we're open and where we go to school in life. So, in the most extremes of the spectrum, we do have beings that have all nine centers defined, and they can be, depending on how those centers are hooked up, they could be any type except reflector, because reflector is the complete opposite. Reflectors have no defined centers in their chart. And then there's everybody in between. And I've seen, manifestors that only have two centers defined, and they're very open, but they still have the impactful aura. Or I've seen, projectors who have almost everything defined. And there's like that kind of key that they present has a very specific lock that they're looking for in terms of who they're here to guide.
the defined centers, is that where we are a little more rigid in sort of who we are and how we function in this world? And the open centers are where we'll compromise a little bit more and sort of go with the flow or go with sort of whoever's around us? Because is it true that we tend to be attracted to people that have the opposite of what we do?
Mm-hmm. No, it's absolutely true. So when we look at the human design chart, another way to see it is literally the genetic blueprint, the imprint of your double helix of your gene code. So when somebody has a defined center that you have opened, it's the quintessential opposites attract genetic imperative. It's, oh, they have genetic material that I don't have. I'm drawn to them because I want to create new novel combinations in the world. So that's also a way that we really learn and grow as a species, because when we have an open center, we're naturally drawing in the energies that fill in that center to give us experiences, new connections within ourselves, within our just divine matrix of our being, and also to give us experiences that show us who we are and who we're not. So the defined centers for any given person are where they should be inflexible. We're here to become stronger and stronger and stronger in our defined aspects so that we give off that really vibrant, pure frequency of who we are. Because that vibrant, pure frequency then attracts those that are really meant to be in our process, in our life, in our journey. The open centers are where we're most sensitive. So it's literally where we absorb the energy of others and amplify it to a greater degree than even they experience it. So from like earlier when I was talking about my open solar plexus, I'm not just feeling what other people are feeling, I'm feeling their emotions stronger than they are. And that makes me, I mean, it just given me a life of the masterclass of emotional intelligence. I've had to become extremely um, fluent in emotional situations and maintain a high level of critical thinking ability, highly charged emotional situations, because that's the only way I could keep myself differentiated from that overwhelming, overpowering emotional energy. So the same can be in any aspect of our chart. How we think, how we feel, how much we value ourselves or not can all be influenced by which kind of defined or open centers that we have and what we're around.
So I'm an emotional authority, which is my solar plexus. Does that mean it's defined or undefined?
Defined.
It is defined. Okay.
Your intrinsic emotional process is what ultimately gives you the clarity that you are to move forward with something or not. It's not other people's. No.
The reason I ask is because you're talking about having the open solar plexus and being able to tap into other people's emotions. And so I was going to say, is that what sort of makes somebody an empath? But I know that I am empathic and that I am able to do the same thing. I can physically feel what other people are feeling. So then that theory goes out the window.
Kind of. You having a defined solar plexus doesn't mean that you don't feel others. It just means that your intrinsic internal cycle of your emotions is your ultimate decision-making authority. You still feel everything in the world around you, and the more clear you are within your own process, the clearer you are at feeling what's around you. For me, it's just that it's not an authority. So I'm not here to make decisions based on emotion, period. Because when I do that, it's always going to be based on somebody else's influence on me emotionally. And that's just a clear distinction for me to know that emotional decisions are never correct for me. It has to come from a more sacral, energetic gut place, which is another fine line that we have to kind of clearly describe so that we don't confuse it. But both can be empathic. It's just a matter of where are you coming from when it comes down to where you're going, what situations are right for you, and where you're putting your energy and where you're committing your time.
So there's sacral and emotional authorities. What other authorities are there?
We have splenic authority, which is instinctual authority that operates only right now, only in the present moment. There is no past or future for a splenic person, and they're here to be really tapped into the intelligence of their body as it helps them navigate moment to moment. Turn right now, go down that, talk to that person, open that door. very much a great deal of wisdom in that authority because it's our oldest awareness center. So we've had the greatest amount of development and evolution in the splenic authority. Sacral authority is like a yuck yum response. Do I have the energy for this or not? And I'm not here to question what my response is. Emotional is kind of going on the spiral of emotion around the same topic several times, probably up and down, up and down. And finally, as that spiral compresses, we get to a nice place of clarity where we get to move forward. There's also some like rarer authorities like ego projected authority, where these people are literally invited and initiated by life itself and called to guide just through the happenstance of kind of shocking things, and they have a very shocking life story to share. You have this channel of initiation, but it's not your authority. We have self-projected authority, where the voice and the tonality of the voice is actually the guiding force. Like, do I have a strong vocal sense of embodiment when it comes to this invitation or not? We have mental, which is no inner authority, which is more of a process-based authority than actually having a specific area in your body that tells you. And that's kind of a hybrid between the projector and the reflector authority, although mental projectors are projectors. And then the perhaps strangest one to normal reality would be the reflectors, which is to wait a whole moon cycle to make a decision. Wait the whole 28 days. And that's because so much internal variability is being experienced because you're reflecting this person and this transit and then that person or this environment, that it's very hard for a reflector to know if something is truly about them or for them in one given moment. So with that moon cycle, to see it from many different impressions and reflections, they can say, oh, that opportunity did stick around for me, not just for who I looked like I was in that moment. And there's also ego manifested. So a manifestor that is purely based on what their ego is telling them, which is about desire, which is about the heart, which is about their connection to their tribe. And, it's about them tapping into, is my heart really in this? Which is a more subjective, I would say, authority than a lot of the other ones.
It's so funny because we obviously adjust to who we are, and especially as you go through the journey of discovering your human design and embracing it. The manifestor in me talking about how reflectors have to wait to make their decision. It's giving me anxiety. I can't imagine having to wait that long. And I understand that for them that would work, but geez Louise, I would struggle. I would struggle if somebody said to me, you have to wait a month, because I'm that person that, decisions are made and they're made quite quickly. And then the strategies. So mine is to inform. Yours is to respond. What are the other strategies that we have?
I think the manifestor one is really interesting. And I wanted to say this about it, is that the manifestor truly has no inherent strategy. They are the free agent. They are here to move as their energy says, go do it now. They're just kind of exploding creative power sometimes, as you said. And that's just an interesting just addendum to the informing piece, because the informing piece is just to get people out of your way or to bring them on board with what you're creating. It's helping reduce resistance from your external environment. Because when people feel your power at work, they can be intimidated. Their ego can want to push back, or they can be downright afraid of what's going to happen and they resist. So to inform is to clear your creative path so that you can proceed without interruption, because there's nothing a manifestor hates more than being interrupted in their creative flow.
Correct.
So there's that. So the response of the generator is the fact that we are life force beings. This mass amount of energy that we bring into the world to build, to create, it's not ours. It comes from the earth. So the consciousness of the earth coming through us has to say, yep, that's what you're here to do. That's what the energy is for. Go ahead. Or no, even though all of your not self and your ego and your conditioning says you should want that, your life force says, no, you can't have it. So that's the response that's coming through the generators and the mani gens. The strategy for projectors is to wait to be invited, and that's because their aura stands out, stands apart from the rest in their own way, and it's encoded with the wisdom, the knowledge, the guidance that they're here to share. So before any, verbal conversation begins, the projector's aura is already talking to the auras of those around them and saying, do we have what you need? Do we have the right codes or the right guidance or the right knowledge base to really work with you? So projectors are allowing themselves to kind of pollinate and scatter their energy around and see who invites them energetically, who says, yes, you can have access to my energy. Because if a projector doesn't wait for that invitation, that focused and penetrating aura that they have can be very like, whoa, 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 you're seeing into my soul and I didn't give you permission. It's penetrating. And so there needs to be that communication and that invitation. And then finally, the reflector is the wait 28 days. So it's kind of like the lunar cycle is their authority and their strategy in a way.
One question I've always had about manifesting generators, the fact that they are the generator as well as a manifestor, is there not a balance where you have the power to initiate as well as respond because you have both things going on, both archetypes?
Good question. The truth about Manigens is that they have a generator aura. So they can certainly impact, but it has to come from a response first. So I'm here with this open, enveloping generator aura. And once I get that response of my yes, then I can kind of condense that aura into a more impactful one, like a manifestor. And as I move through life and space, I have that ability to just kind of get from A to Z a lot quicker than a pure generator, which is more like A to B, then B to C, then C to D. So we do have both, but we don't have that initiatory spark that repelling aura would give us.
So it's like you're a turbocharged generator in a way.
Yeah.
Like as you were talking about going from A to Z, I'm having a vision of one of the old school video games where, you get something special and for a short period of time you get to zoom and get to the place faster. So then we have the lines and the gates. And this is where I started getting really confused when I first discovered human design. So we don't all have all the lines and we don't have all the gates. So let's start with within the lines, there are some where they're connected from gate to gate. And I will bring this up on the
Those
screen.
are channels.
Channels, sorry. So you've got the channels that go from gate to gate, but then you've got channels where it's only from one gate and it stops halfway. What is that about?
It's called a hanging gate. And just like we were talking with the we're attracted to what we're not kind of paradigm, whenever you have a hanging gate coming out of a center, it's always going to be one of the places where you're magnetizing what's on the other end of that channel the most consistently. So in human design, there's a channel called the 1222. It's the channel of openness. It's about emotional expression. So if I have just a 22, I have the emotional awareness of what I want to express, but I don't have the consistent voice to get it out there. So I'm always going to be magnetizing gate 12 people. When I'm in their aura, I'm absorbing and amplifying that gate 12, and suddenly I have all the right words to say about how I want to express myself. So it's kind of like we're circuit boards. And when we have that complementary circuit come into play, we complete the circuit and we express the energy, and we either manifest something or move something through or express an emotion or make a decision. And that's how life is, this constant dance of completion.
And when we see the channels and they're colored in two different colors, what does that mean?
Well, in a chart that anyone might be looking at, there's a black and a red. And the black side is talking about your conscious personality, that which you identify with, that which you see in the mirror and you think of yourself, this is who I am. And then there's the unconscious, which is just the hard wiring of the body. What is your body always doing, whether you are conscious of it or not? So when something is red and black, that means there's an aspect of your design that is both conscious and unconsciously defined for you. And it's going to be part of this basic programming of the physical form and just what it's doing and how it's going about its life. And it's also part of you that you're very much aware of and know as one of your attributes, perhaps that you also can see a parallel in your astrology chart.
And then we have the gates. And I actually loved reading about the gates. I found it fascinating because one of the things, and every time we talk about human design, I bring this up, gate 53, and I don't know the correct name for it. I call it the gate of shock and awe, because when I was reading about this gate,
51.
Oh, 51. I always call it 53. And every time I realize it's 51 because you correct me or I pick up my book. What is the actual name for it?
Okay, so the way that I know it is it's the gate of the warrior or the priestess. So it's an energy archetype like that. It's also the gate of shock and awe, and it's part of the channel of initiation. So it kind of brings all of those things. It's about the individual willpower to jump into the void, to jump into the unknown, to be the one to go first, which is one of the hardest things to do in life, in my opinion. So, the first one to jump off the high diving board or go skydiving or go into the ayahuasca ceremony, go into those moments of you have no idea what's on the other side of that. It could be death for all you know. But the gate 51 people have that willpower to be like, I want to win. So they go for it. And it is a design of being first.
The other thing is, I've always found, though, that I have been quite shocking to everybody around me. And sometimes I do it on purpose because you want to rile people up, not in a bad way, but you want to sort of get people having some kind of reaction. There are other times where I think I am doing something so innocent and I look around me and people's jaws are on the floor, not because I've done necessarily something offensive, or it could be the most random thing, but people just go, why did you just do that? Or how did you just do that? And there's no understanding of it. And that has always happened my entire life. And learning about the gates put all of that into perspective for me.
Yeah. The gates are like our superpowers. That's how I see them. And when you learn which planet is activating which gate in your design, then you get an even clearer picture of how it's going to show up for you or why it shows up for you in your experience when you get that context. And then when you even go deeper and you look at the channels and how certain gates make up the channels and certain planets activate those gates, you have this really nice profile of like, what are the superpowers that you're wielding in this life? And where do they come from and how do they operate and how do they impact the world around you?
Because obviously in astrology, the planets move. So does that mean that the gates are activated by planets at different times and then they move off and sort of come back around again? Or are you talking
When
about
it comes to
birth chart sort of thing where when you're looking at somebody's chart, you're looking at where the planets were when they were born?
right, so like in our design, in our actual body graph, we're looking at moments of imprinting. Where were the planets at that exact moment of birth? And also the 88 degrees of the sun's arc or one Mercury rotation before birth. Those two come together to make who you're going to be for your whole life. That's your design. Now, at any given moment, of course, yes, there are the planets in the sky, and those are a huge impact as well, because let's say, like we were saying, you have a hanging gate 22, and then the sun moves into gate 12. During that roughly week cycle of the gate being the sun and being gate 12, you're finding that you have all the right words to say. You finally are making emotionally clear decisions. You're manifesting, you're singing, you're writing, you're creating. And with that context, it's like you can almost kind of plan, like, oh, this is going to be a great week for me as an artist or as a speaker. So it's both. But our design never changes. It's pretty concrete. There are different life cycles that bring different themes, just like in astrology, but who we are and who we've come into this world as it's crystallized, and that's a good thing.
Then we have single definition. Is it double definition and triple definition?
We have single, split,
Split.
triple split, and quadruple split.
So what does that mean?
And so, yeah, so single definition means all of those defined centers in your chart are all connected to each other. So there's a sense of um, continuity in our design. It's very much self-empowered because all of those connections that would have need to be made to catalyze a decision or emotional clarity or whatever it may be come from within us. We're not referencing or outsourcing. When we come to a split definition, we're looking for very key players in our life that come into our aura and bridge the splits. So let's say I have a root and a solar plexus connected and a sacral energy center, but they're not talking by themselves. When I find somebody that has that particular channel or gate that connects those two areas, I feel like myself again. I feel a sense of wholeness and flow and just clarity that I don't on my own, because as this is a frequency technology, it's almost like having two different songs playing, two different frequencies in the same aura. And then we take it to the triple split. It's the same phenomenon, but with three different areas that are all going on in the same aura, but not necessarily always connecting. And they need to be around large groups because in that large group setting, they're picking up all the little connections they need to kind of circulate and make cohesive the energy in their chart. And then quadruple splits are just an even more extreme example of that same phenomenon.
So it is fair to say that somebody who is single definition, it's easier for them to function on their own without other people around them because they feel complete. Because that was my first understanding of single definition. And then I didn't quite understand how it worked with the split, triple split, all of that. So thank you. Now, this is one of the hardest things that I've tried to understand with human design, the incarnation cross. What is it? How does it affect us?
So your incarnation cross is your purpose, essentially. I mean, that's, I think, the closest thing to what we would speak of in the spiritual community. It is this overarching thematic kind of trajectory for you and how you're like, what are the themes that are going to be most important for your life's work, where you really find the most sense of stability, purpose, alignment, and just that kind of 10th house, if you will, from astrology, that like legacy of what you're here to bring to earth. So when you look at just the one little word or two that they give you on your chart, incarnation cross of penetration, of the sleeping phoenix, of the alpha, it's giving you a little taste of what that purpose may be. But what you really have to do is dive deeper into the four gates that are going to be at the top of either side of the personality and the unconscious. The sun and the earth are what set up the cross of your incarnation cross. And those four gates are going to show you the themes and the lines of your purpose.
So hypothetically, a right angle cross of tension, 21, 48, 38, 39.
Right angle cross of tension is, it's about being, first off, it's about the basic understanding that tension is a force that holds things together in life. It's not necessarily unwanted stress. So there's an energy of holding together that comes with tension. Also, because human design is a dualistic system, there's always this addendum of or not. So it's either holding things together or it's breaking things apart. And that's because it's composed of gate 38, which is the fuel for individual purpose and growth. Gate 39, which is the gate of provocative energy that gets to the heart of the problem. Gate 21, which is about controlling resources, and gate 48, which is about getting to the bottom of things. So when we have these four energies and see how they operate through each individual person's purpose, that's the cool part. The the sum of the parts is much greater than the individual pieces, and it kind of takes on a life of its own. And it's said that your cross grabs you and takes you on its own. It like has its way with you when it fully activates. And there comes a point in your journey when your design is functioning at such a high capacity that you're no longer in there like making the decisions yourself. It's just happening to you. And that's kind of when you know you're on your cross. It's probably when you're living a life asking, why am I doing this? And it's just happening through you. You're becoming that master of that imprint of those four energies in the world and bringing those energies into the world in your unique way.
So for my chart, my not self theme is that of anger. The not self theme, is that when you're not living according to your design? Is that what that means?
Yeah.
Okay. So how many not self themes are there?
There's one for each type. So
okay.
as a manifester, yours is anger because in that dense repelling aura, which is really just a conduit for pure source creative energy to impact and spark new things, when you get blocked from expressing that energy, whether from an internal belief or a trauma or just somebody getting in your way, that powerful force that wants to move through you builds up in the aura. And that's just compressed energy that's felt as anger. It's not that you're an angry person or that you're a bad person for being that way, or that you have a short temper because you think you're better than people. It's just that when that creative energy builds up, that's how it comes across in a human form as anger. I've seen and noticed that manifestor anger is some of the quickest anger to diffuse. It's very intense when it comes into being, but it's not the kind that hangs around and guilts you for several years. It's kind of like, let me leave the room and come back and we can go back to being friends. So there's manifesting generators who have to deal with frustration from the generator side and anger from the manifestor side. So frustration on the generator, pure generator or manifesting generator comes from them forcing that life force into doing something it's not designed for. It's like a gear grinding against incorrectly machined part. It's a friction. When we take our mental guilt trip or whatever it is that day to force ourselves into something that the life force of the planet has already said, no, we're rubbing against our own design, and that friction is frustration. When you're a manifesting generator, it's just worse. It's like throwing gasoline on that friction and it blows up. And it's a longer lasting, sustaining anger, not like the quick anger of the manifester. With projectors, we have bitterness. Bitterness comes from trying to force what you see as a potential in someone else onto them without waiting for the invitation. I'll heal them, I'll save them, I'll make them see how valuable and beautiful they are. And you put all this energy into trying to help somebody who never opened their energy to you, and it leaves you feeling drained and like you never want to help another person again. And that is bitterness. And it's actually the opposite of the signature, which is sweetness. And all of these not self themes have an opposite signature theme. Manifestors, peace. I'm not angry. I'm at peace because I got to express my creative energy. Generators, mani-gens, satisfaction. I love with the flow of how my energy was used. Projectors, success, sweetness. I feel so loved and appreciated for the amazing outcome I was able to co-create with these people. And then finally, reflectors, their not self-theme is disappointment. I got hired on the job, but I was reflecting a manifestor at the time. When I showed up 2 weeks later to start the job, I wasn't that manifestor anymore, and I was disappointed when they fired me because I didn't wait my 28 days. Their signature theme is surprise. Oh my gosh, it actually worked out. There's actually something consistent in this life. Woo! So, yes.
See, there is so much to all of this. It just blows my mind. I hate that we have time constraints because I could talk about this with you for days and days and days. The reason the whole anger not self theme is interesting to me because I talked earlier about my childhood and the frustration because I was constantly going against what my family wanted, and I couldn't always explain why. I just knew I couldn't follow what they wanted and I needed to do something different. But if you asked my family, they would say I had anger issues as a child. And when I was asked as a child what was going on, I would say, I am frustrated. Nobody is listening to me. And then they would go, just go and do what you're told. So it was a real thing, and it was a journey to get past that. And people think that because I had those anger issues as a child, that they still exist. And I do have a temper in me, but very rarely does it ever appear. And you're absolutely right. If it does, I come out and I say what I need to say, then I go away, take a breath, and I come back. And when it's done, it's done. Let's all move forward. Human design even talks about digestion. And so mine is calm touch. What are the other types of digestion that people would have?
So digestion has a lot to do with how to properly nourish your unique brain system. And everybody's brain system is attuned to one of the three centers of awareness in the body graph. It's either splenic, which is very ancient and primitive in a way, but still very powerful. It's either ajna, which is more mental and it's very much has direct connection to the mind and our mental conceptualization of things, vision. And then there's the solar plexus, which is more about touch and light. And that's the more advanced of all the three. But it has the most depth, but it's still kind of mutating into its full form. It's not necessarily fully baked yet. So touch cognition and calm touch is about your nervous system needing to be in a calm state before you take food into your body. Because it's the most highly evolved, exactly what you eat is not as important as much as it is the state that you're in when you're doing that digesting. Calm touch wants you to really feel the aura of your food, essentially, like literally, like, okay, maybe, you see spiritual people do this little thing before they eat, they put the hands over the food. They might be calm touch, they might actually instinctually be putting that auric contact into their system, because in their system it's like, okay, it's kale and there's some, this or that on it. It's all about preparing the body to digest what you're putting in it. Because if we're just throwing stuff down the hatch without that specific way of attuning to it first, the nourishment that we derive from it is very homogenized. It doesn't go to the specific areas of our unique design that are here to constantly being, upgraded and tuned in to, like, our superpowers. So the more that you nourish yourself with calm touch, the more depth that you absorb through your touch, the more power that you have when you confer that touch on somebody. There can be so much communicated in that touch that words can't say. And there can be so much that's understood about that person through touch that your eyes or your ears would not be able to decipher. So it's all about nourishing our specific little cognition. Like, I'm outer vision, open taste. So I have to, like, look at my food very specifically, and I'm not supposed to, like, be talking and looking around and blabbing. I'm meant to really, like, keep that strong visual connection, because then my brain can put it in all the right places and I get better eyesight and I see people's auras more clearly, and I'm building that unique superpower, right? Cognition and digestion.
So
And we're learning about this in my new class.
the strongest sense and digestion, they go together, do they?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because mine is also out of vision.
Yes. So the way that you nourish that strongest sense in the cognition is through which type of digestion.
So you talked about your newest class. Tell us about it.
Yeah, the Rave Way Shower certification is the first foray that I've made into teaching this deeper layer of variable. So the diet, the digestion, the cognition, the environmental, where are you meant to really connect to the forces that unfold your unique destiny, as well as what is your most aligned psychological motivation? Like, how are you meant to see life because we're all meant to see different things. That's how we have unique opinions, unique contributions, viewpoints, etc., discoveries. And then also something called trajectory, which shows your alignment to that kind of incarnation cross storyline that you uniquely have. And we all have it. We have a geometry to this life in these bodies, in these vehicles, but we need to be on frequency to activate it. If we're off frequency, we're just like a free roaming particle, and there's just not as much cognition, safety, health, alignment in that way of living.
And where can people go to find out more about the course or book in if they want to take part?
They can find me on Instagram, Human Design Maven, one word. You can email me. I'll give you the email so they can find it in the box below, hdm@hdmaven.com, or my website, hdmaven.com.
And if somebody wants to book a reading with you, they can do that through your website?
Yes, they can. And I'll have a special button link just for Natalie Sadie viewers so that they can enjoy a discount, because we love Natalie's work and all her awesome community members.
Well, we love the Human Design Maven because I don't think anybody can explain human design in the way that you can. And there is a power and an ease to how you deliver these messages that I just adore. And I hope at some point we can come back and do a follow-up on all of this and dive just a little bit deeper. But I will have all of those links in the comments below. Dylan, thank you so much. I know you're traveling at the moment. So thank you for taking the time to go through all of this with me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, as always. Can't wait for next one.